Before I begin, I would like to pray to my guru and my mother, Amma, who is also the chancellor of the university, hoping that this talk would be useful for at least some of the audience. A little bit about me. I'm an assistant professor with the Amrita Center for Cybersecurity Systems and Networks. Before joining Amrita, I have over 10 years of experience working in the software industry. And I have now 15 years of experience in the academia. Mainly, I mentor students both inside and outside classrooms. That's my Twitter handle and my LinkedIn profile. This is the photo of our campus. It is between the Arabian Sea and the backwaters of Kerala. It's a beautiful place. I invite all of you to visit here. I am also, as Prakash ji mentioned, I am also the founder of some of these student clubs, because as I said, I focus on training students both inside as well as outside the classrooms. So Team BIOS is a cybersecurity team that takes part in what are called as Capture the Flag contests, which I will explain what it is. By doing that, students get excited and develop skills in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a broad term, and what are these skills? I will talk about that a little later. AMFOS, when I worked in the industry, and most of the people who come in don't have the skills. They're not ready to start working. So how do we get students to develop these skills while they are inside the classroom itself? So with that in mind, I've started this FOSS club where students contribute to various open source software and develop a lot of skills like reading code, writing code, sending emails, and typing fast, various other skills that are needed in the industry, which sometimes we are not able to address inside the classroom. Team Shakthi is a woman-only cybersecurity team, and they are also taking part in various contests. Some of the contests and conferences that I found in order to help students to develop skills, because there are not too many beginner-friendly cybersecurity contests. So we started Amrita in CTF in 2010, where a complete beginner who has interest can start learning with our support and get some skills. Several companies are also using this as a recruitment platform for finding the best talent. ShaktiCon is a conference we started this year. It is basically focused on women in cybersecurity to help students, women faculty, women professionals, as well as students to get into cybersecurity or connect with each other. And in CTF Junior, we started in 2015, focused on school students. Several other countries such as US, Israel, UK, Korea, they start training their students quite early itself. And in India, we are not doing that. And it makes a huge difference if students can get started much earlier. And so the contest helps students to get started earlier from while they are in school itself. I'll skip some of these slides. These are, I just mentioned about this. This is Team Shakti. Okay, before I begin, I wanted to explain some terms. Vulnerabilities. Vulnerability is a weakness. For example, if we build a house and there is some particular, maybe the front door and the gate is very strongly built, and it is not very easy to break into it. But maybe there is some terrace door that is not as strong, or maybe some other door at the back of the kitchen or something like that. And that is a kind of a weakness through which somebody could break in more easily than the front door. So even in software, there are vulnerabilities. There are certain weaknesses which may or may not be exploited. So that is what I mean by a vulnerability. Malwares are softwares that are written for malicious purposes intentionally. There are viruses, worms, trojans. These are things that you would hear about. Viruses and worms both are able to replicate automatically, but virus needs another program as a host, whereas a worm doesn't need another program as a host, and it can replicate. That means automatically, without any user intervention, from one computer to the other, if it is networked, it can travel and then keep infecting other computers. Ransomware is a type of a malware where it locks various files in the computer so that you cannot use it. Maybe you have your personal data or medical records or any kind of data or on your phone, if it is on your phone or any device, computing device. And once it is hit by a ransomware, it encrypts all of these files, and you have to pay ransom for somebody to unlock it. And if you have been reading in the news in the last few weeks, there have been tons of ransomware attacks that are happening. And finally, 0 days are vulnerabilities for which there is no particular fix. It is not available. If you are using Windows or other software regularly, you will find that there will be security patches. You have to update it. For example, recently for Google Chrome, there were several security patches. Windows also had a very critical security vulnerability, and Microsoft released a patch for it. But suppose there is no patch for it, there is no fix for it, then it is called as a 0 day. And people sell these 0 days in the black market to attack others. Okay, so with that, I'll start with a brief history of internet. Today, there are different statistics that we can see, but some statistics say that by the end of this year, 46 billion connected devices are there. Imagine that, 46 billion connected devices. There is only 7.9 billion human beings in the world. So in the 1960s, the computers were huge. You can see the photographs, and they are so big that it is not very easy to move it. But at the same time, there were some problems. There was no way to share data. Remember, there was no internet or anything. There was no networking at that time. And so there was no way to share data. If somebody had to share data, so there were researchers working on various problems in different labs throughout the country. So if they wanted to share data, they have to physically take it in the tape and ship it, or drive it and bring it to this other location, and that is the only way that could be done. So that was a problem that people wanted to solve. And also it was the time of Cold War era, and Russia had just sent the Sputnik satellite, and there was this thought that there will be some nuclear war happening and all that. So in case of a war, how do they transport data fast? And so they wanted to figure out how to basically computers can talk to each other. That led to the ARPANET, which helped to transfer data between two computers. Unfortunately, this was a very limited network, and it could not be used by others. So others also found out similar networks, and they used it to transfer data. But there was another problem. The 2 or 3 different types of networks could not talk to each other. So it's like somebody is talking in one language, maybe in Hindi, and somebody else is talking in Malayalam, but they both can't understand each other unless they both know a common language. So that's how it was. So in 1974, there was a seminal paper by Winton Cerf and Bob Kahn. There's a protocol for packet network intercommunication. This talked about how we can solve the problem of different networks talking to each other. This was where the TCP protocol was introduced. And on Jan 1st, 83 was supposed to be the official birth of internet, because dissimilar networks could now talk to each other via TCP. But what was the use, why was this all there? It was mainly for sharing of data very easily. This whole thing, researchers wanted to share data very easily. Nobody ever thought, probably at that time, that somebody would misuse this technology. People were just using it for sharing data. But as with any other thing, any other technology, people started misusing it. So they started abusing the internet. So few notable hacks was, changing the billing rate of phones. So there was a software that, is used for billing when you make phone calls, and, people wanted to change the billing rate. And there were these punch cards that was used for bus tickets and all that. That also, there was some hacks going on over there. And through the internet, they copied unauthorized, the software was copied. This was by Kevin Metnick. He's a famous hacker, copying software and accessing voice messages. So these were some of the things that were happening. But one of the major things that happened that affected, they say, 10% of the computers at that time was in November 2nd, 1988. It was the Morris worm, which was launched from MIT. So it was by Robert Morris, who was then a graduate student at Cornell University. So he went to MIT and just wanted to find out if he is able to write a program which can replicate, and he was trying to see whether he can measure the total number of computers on the internet. but something went wrong over there. And then, it affected the computer more than once. It was not supposed to do that, but it ended up affecting the same computer more than once, slowing down the computer systems and making them unusable. There was an estimated financial loss of 10 million US dollars. More than 2,000 computers were infected in 15 hours, and it took 2 days to disinfect. And there are some estimates, there are different estimates. So some of them say that 10% of the computers were infected. So it was about 60,000 computers were there at that time, 1998. So about 6,000 computers were affected. So this led to the birth of CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team. What happens in the future if there are other attacks? Is there an agency that will coordinate or monitor all these kind of things? So now throughout the world, even in India also, we have CERT India. So this is the event that led to it. So I'm going to look at some of the other, there have been several attacks that has happened, but I'm looking at some of the, very prominent attacks. So there was this Stuxnet attack, which was the world's first digital weapon. So as students, if students are there in this talk or faculty, you have written code for doing some things useful. But now code has become a weapon, just like a bomb or a machine gun. It's being used as a weapon. And it was first uncovered in 2010, and it used 4 0 days. I explained what is 0 day. It's a vulnerability where there is no fix yet. And it targeted industrial control systems, and it physically degraded a lot of machines. So what it does is it used to speed up the centrifuge. There was this nuclear reactor in Natanz in Iran. And there's a uranium enrichment plant where there is a centrifuge. The centrifuge rotates at a certain speed, and it tries to purify the uranium. But what this Stuxnet did was that it made the centrifuge to rotate much faster, but the display would not show that. The display would show that it is rotating at the correct RPM, but it's actually going much faster than that. And therefore, thousands of these, centrifuges were destroyed. And later it was found out that it was because of this weapon, this Stuxnet. And then this is in 2016, there was an unprecedented hack of Ukraine's power grid. Because today everything is digital. We have our entertainment, education, transportation, booking tickets, shopping, everything is done online, including critical infrastructure such as nuclear plants, water treatment plants, and power grids. All of these are online. So hackers were able to shut down the power. This is the first time such an attack was there in Ukraine. There is this interesting write-up, an article in 2016 in the New York Magazine. I have put the link over here. We are all witnessing the coronavirus pandemic now, but what if there is a cyber pandemic? What would be the effect of it? This is a very interesting article. It talks about it. It's an imaginary scenario, but based on real incidences that has already happened, like the Ukraine power grid attack, and various cars are getting attacked and all that. So it's an interesting read. I would recommend that you read it and understand what will happen. This is something probably going to happen in the future, cyber pandemic. Some more recent attacks that has happened. This is in the last few months that has happened. Colonial Pipeline attack. I will explain that a little later. And maybe you have read about this Twitter high-profile targeted cryptocurrency scam, where high-profile Twitter handles tweeted to send money to a particular Bitcoin account. WannaCry ransom. I'm not going to go to details of this. Just telling you that this happened. KCR ransomware attack happened like July 4th. So it's just a few days old. And Byju's data breach. There was also this Air India data breach, Domino's data breach. So many of these attacks happened very recently. I will just explain only the Colonial Pipeline attack because this was one of the largest attacks. So what is Colonial Pipeline? It is one of the largest pipeline operators in the US, and it provides roughly 45% of the East Coast fuel, including the gasoline, diesel, etc. And the company says that it transports 10 million gallons of fuel daily, and it is from Texas to New York. I have a map. You can see that it is the pipe is starting from Houston, where they have refineries, and then it goes all the way up to New Jersey, New York. And what happened in this attack is, so this colonial pipeline is basically 5,500 miles long, and it carries 3 million barrels of fuel. On May 6th, which is very recent, 100 GB of data was stolen, from this company. And on 7th, the ransomware attack happened, and it led to the immediate closing down. And it took until May 12th evening for it to be restored. So imagine, something like that keeps happening. So many people were affected. The oil prices went up, and there was a lot of chaos. Panic buying happened, and they had to pay a huge amount of money for them to decrypt this file. So the file, encrypted all their, billing information and various software, and they could not do billing, and hence they had to stop the operations completely. And once they paid the ransom, which they did immediately, but even then it took another 6 days for them to be able to restore everything back, because the decryption took, a lot of time. And I don't have too many details of it. Whatever is in public domain is only what I'm saying. Okay, so I will go fast forward a little bit. Colonial Pipeline didn't have multi-factor authentication, and that was one of the reasons that this happened. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So there is another recent attack which happened in 2020. A patient dies after a ransomware attack hit a hospital. So this, recently happened in 2020 because of, ransomware attacking a hospital in Germany. Actually, patient died. So we understand how important, cybersecurity is. That, all these digital resources needs to be protected. And why are so many attacks happening? As we saw, that internet was itself not designed, for security, but so many things have changed now. But some of the other reasons are softwares are becoming more and more complex, and making them secure is also becoming more difficult. And there are increasing number of connected devices. And then there is lack of cybersecurity knowledge and awareness by developers, testers, sysadmins, database administrators, DevOps, etc. For example, as faculty and as students, if you are listening to this talk, that, you are taught how to code, but you do not know, or you're not taught about secure coding. I will explain that a little bit, what is that. And because of all these attacks, this is from a news article, says global cybersecurity spending, it is predicted to exceed $1 trillion. It's a huge amount of spending. People are now spending a huge amount of money on cybersecurity. And you can also see that global cybersecurity market size is projected to grow from 217.9 billion in 2021 to 345 billion in 2026. So all these statistics are showing that, it's a huge growth. But at the same time, there is also a huge amount of unfulfilled cybersecurity jobs. Currently, even in India as well as globally, there's a huge amount of unfulfilled cybersecurity jobs. So the question is, as educators, how do we solve the skill gap? That is the question. How do we help the industry, and how do we help, prepare the next generation workforce? So these are based on, some of the things that I have been doing in the last 15 years. And just before that, okay. So in the classrooms, what can be done inside the classrooms by educators? One is to introduce secure coding practices in the syllabus. So if you're teaching Python or Java or C programming or any programming, introductory programming course, maybe a small amount of time, maybe 2 lectures can be dedicated for explaining about, not only coding, but how do you code securely. I have a small demo that I would like to show you. Can somebody tell me if this is visible? 1 minute.
Yes, it's visible.
The video is visible? Huh? Share screen. No.
Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay.
Yeah, visible.
All right. Unmute. How do I yeah. Okay, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so here is a small C program where it says that there is a check equal to, it's an integer check equal to 0 and another integer array value 12, and we are doing a getters value and then checking if check. That means if it is 0, if it is checked, never, it should not be printed, else print check is 0. I hope this program is clear. It is just checking what is the value, and we have predefined the value of check to be 0. So there is no way that the check should not be any other value. We defined it as 0, and we are not changing the value in the program in any way. So when we check, then it should print check is 0, and then there is a main function. So let us run this program and see what happens. So here we have given the input AAA, and you can see that it is printing check is 0. And now you see that when we have given a much larger input, it says that this should never be printed. So I hope you understood this demo. According to the code, this should never happen. So I'll go back to my presentation. Okay, so
yeah, we can see now.
Yeah, so what do we do inside the classroom? So I was saying that we should introduce these secure coding practices in the syllabus, maybe 2 sessions on secure coding, as well as when we have subjects like systems related subjects like operating systems or networks, etc. There can be some amount of security that can be taught. If there is web development course or mobile application development course that is already being offered, there also we can have a few sessions on security and privacy. So hence, without much change or offering new electives, we can slowly start introducing this in the subject. Then we can also offer new courses on cybersecurity. For example, web security or VAPT, mobile security, cloud security, malware analysis, exploitation, etc. And so how do we do that? I will explain that in the end. How is it possible to do that? I have set up some labs, etc., which can be used for this purpose. And we have to ensure that these courses are more on hands-on, and not only theory. There should be hands-on. The other things that can be done is introduce, if there is already mini projects or the final year thesis. Students who are interested can be given topics in security, and therefore they can develop some skills in security by taking up these things. And maybe the university or the teacher can consider giving grace marks for people taking part in cybersecurity contests and doing well in that. This is something that we do in Amrita University. If students take part in capture the flag and they do well, we give them grace marks for that. Some of the other things that can be done is that have discussions about various news about attacks. That could be also a part of some of the subjects, like, okay, this kind of like colonial pipeline hack happened, or some of the other hack, Orion hack. These things can be discussed in the classrooms, and it can help students to get interest and develop their curiosity, so that they can start learning and get excited about security. And outside classrooms, we can have student clubs. I have mentioned about some of the student clubs that I started, and that can focus on security. And CTFs are, I will explain that subsequently what they are. And there is also this bug bounty, which is quite popular in India, and several students are into bug bounty. There are a lot of resources on how to get started with bug bounty, and these things also can be encouraged either in some student clubs outside classrooms. So if there are students in listening to this session, how do you develop skills? So one of the things is that you have to be really curious. How are these things working, and exactly those kind of things, knowing how things work exactly helps you to know how to break a system. And that is called as adversarial thinking. For example, when you go to a store, you see, barcode scanner is there. There is a barcode scanner which has the price. So how do you abuse the system? Maybe you can generate your own barcode and, put it on that, and then, that can alter the price. I'm not saying that you should actually do it. This is just a mindset that people have, but ethics is, as in any other profession, ethics is of utmost importance. But this kind of thinking is what is used for teaching security. It's called the attacker mindset or adversarial thinking. As I said that, reading security news, I encourage students. I have, various Discord channels with my students, and, we discuss various security news that is happening, and, that excites them a lot. Blog what you learn or make a video. So this also, today, this helps as your resume. If you have a version control system where you put your programs like Git, and also if you have your blog, instead of saying that I'm good in reading or writing, or I am a good leader, you have to demonstrate it these days. So for demonstrating all these things, you can, your writing skills, blog will help. Another thing that I find with several students is that they don't know how to ask questions correctly. There is this useful link from this CATB. It explains very clearly of how to ask questions correctly, because sometimes you don't get all the answers from the classroom or from, within your teacher. So you have to go to various forums and, get answers from there. And if you want to get answers, you need to learn how to ask questions in the right way. Unless you ask questions in the right way, you're not going to get any answers. Then there are something called as war games, and there are several available. I am just listing a very few of them. You can go and search in the internet for what is this war game and how to get started with it. And this will, help you to start developing some skills in security, practical skills. And this can be added to your resume, saying that I am in this particular level in CryptoPals or in Wallet Hub. I've solved all these boxes, etc. So that, shows that you have the practical skills to do security. Then there are deliberately vulnerable applications. So these applications are written in such a way that intentionally there are vulnerabilities, and then your goal is to find them and fix them. So for example, WebGoat is one of such applications from OWASP, an organization called OWASP. But there are several such deliberately vulnerable applications, like DAM vulnerable web application, DAM vulnerable Linux, etc. There are so many of these things available. So you can search for more such things and get started with all these things. Then if you are interested in masters, maybe you are doing your bachelor's, and if you're interested in masters, then you can look for those offering a lot of practical based courses. So here, I teach in the Amrita Center for Cybersecurity Systems and Networks. Our courses are, a lot of them are very hands-on. We have our own labs that we have designed, and, it helps students to get hands-on course. And we also now recently have an online MCA program that we have just starting now, which also has a lot of hands-on stuff. But I'm sure there are other, places where there are other hands-on stuff happening. One thing that I would highly recommend is for all the students to take part in Amrita in CTF. The registrations for this year just started recently. It's an entry-level CTF. Typically, CTFs last for 24 hours or 48 hours. But this is very different, that it lasts for 4 months, because we don't assume that, the participants know anything. And so there is a learning round where we provide learning materials. We have our custom videos and wiki and, various sessions that we take. And then practice challenges are there for students to take part. After that, there is an elimination round and then a final round. I will share the video of last year's in the chat. Ashwin, if you're listening, can you share the video in the chat, last year's in CTF? Certifications, I am not a big fan of certification. I would, prefer that if I am hiring someone, I would not really, it's my personal choice. I'm not saying that certification is not useful. I would just look for practical skills, but there are some certifications which will give you practical skills, such as OSCP. So OSCP is highly valued, and unfortunately it is very expensive. Maybe some students may not be able to, go for it. It's $1,000 for the certification. I have listed some of the other certifications, but my recommendation would be for you to take part in various competitions and blog and keep learning that way. And that's mostly free of cost also. There are lots of cybersecurity movies and novels. So even for teachers as well as for students to develop interest in this area. For example, there is a recent one. I show this movie to all my students, The Imitation Game, which is based on the life of Alan Turing. He is considered as the father of computer science, and he is broke this crypto machine called the Enigma machine, which helped to decipher some of the messages that were sent by the Germans. And so this has a list of some of the other some movies. This is just a small list. There are other movies available. 0 Days is a documentary. It is not a movie. I would definitely urge all of you to watch it and get excited about security. And then there are a lot of nice books. The Cuckoo's Egg is an excellent book based on something real that happened, and how this author Clifford Stoll, he was able to trace back the hackers just because some small 1 cent change or difference in some accounting thing bothered him, and he kept on trying, and then finally he was able to hunt down some hackers from Germany. And there are a lot of other books. The Art of Deception is by Kevin Mitnick. He's a famous hacker, and there are a lot of other books in that series. I would recommend that you guys read these books. These are some of the book covers: The Imitation Game and Mr. Robot, etc. What about some of the additional skills? These are some things that I recommend to all my students, because when I worked in the industry for about 10 years, I found that you have to have a lot of productivity skills. One is the ability to type fast, coding and reading code. So this is something that we do not get to learn in the university, because maximum for the final year project, maybe we may write maximum 200, 300, maybe 400 lines of code at the most. So by contributing to open source, what happens is you easily write thousands of lines of code. And I tell my students to read code every day. Just like you're able to read newspaper in your mother tongue or in any other language, you should be able to read code and comprehend it. So that comes only by practice. As with anything else, it only comes by practice. So you have to read code and get that skill of reading code, debugging programs. There are also the other skills that are needed in the industry: communicating well, working in a team, and writing skills. So writing, that is the reason why I told you to write blogs and maybe make videos and all that. So these are all very important things. But let me tell you something non-technical also: discipline. Today there is too much of distractions, I find, and there is technology itself can be too distracting, a lot of notifications and all that. And I myself was not disciplined until before the pandemic. But the pandemic gave me an opportunity to be really disciplined, and I keep in touch with several of my students, and some of them have a lot of back pain and health issues and all that. So to be productive, ensure that you remain disciplined and healthy. One of the things that I started during the pandemic was doing yoga regularly. I was not in a good shape, and after practicing for the last 1 year, I've improved my health and maintained a lot of discipline. It has helped me to improve my productivity much more. So I encourage you all to practice some form of exercise or take up yoga, because it doesn't need any much space. And you will be surprised that how it completely you remain energetic throughout the day and you remain focused. What are some of the entry-level cybersecurity roles? So I'm just listing it. These slides will be available for you later. I'm not going to go into detail because of lack of time. These are some of the entry-level jobs that are available: security engineers, network security engineer, application security, security analyst, incident analyst responder, source code auditor, forensics incident responder, cryptography analyst, and security auditors. These are just some of the entry-level jobs that are available. Pen testing is another, one. There's several ones that are available. Companies are now using the CTF. Again, I haven't explained what is a CTF. I'll come to that. As a recruitment. So, for example, this is a recent one by Schneider Electric. and they are announcing that, they have a contest, the Capture the Flag contest, CTF, for recruitment. So several companies are now doing this. VMware does this, Deloitte has done this, Ernst & Young, including DRDO. Some of our own students from the master's program were recruited to DRDO through Capture the Flag contest. And therefore, if you want to get into security, this is a really good way, because industry also recognizes this skill because it's practical skill, and it's a good way to get started. Yeah, so in CTF, several companies sponsor in CTF, such as Cisco, VMware, CrowdStrike, and then they recruit people, the people who come top in CTF, they get recruited. They get a chance to be interviewed by top companies, and if they like your skills, they recruit you. So that's another reason for all of the students to just try it out. It doesn't matter that you have zero skills, as long as you have the interest. If you have the interest and you want to try it, it's a good way to start cybersecurity. So with that, let me explain what is a CTF. So CTF is Capture the Flag. So there are programs that are written, maybe web application, maybe a mobile application. So these are written with intentional vulnerabilities. And when you find this vulnerability, using that vulnerability, you can get what is called as a flag. And you have to submit this flag, and then you get points for it. So this screenshot is, from a CTF platform that we developed. And, it shows how many flags and challenges, and, several people can take part and compete with each other from all over the world. So it's a fun way of learning cybersecurity. That's why, several countries have adopted this and use this for training. It's a gamified way of learning cybersecurity. And as I mentioned, it is intentionally vulnerable application, and you are supposed to find what it is. And via InCTF, we help you, step by step, how to get started with it. How do you find out what are the other CTFs or Capture the Flag contests that are happening? There's a website called ctftime.org. So if you visit this website, ctftime.org, it lists the various, cybersecurity contests that are happening, all over the world. Almost every weekend, there is one CTF that is happening. So it's nice that you guys go and check it out. But if you are not a beginner, then, go for some beginner. There are a lot of CTFs that are also aimed for school students. And maybe you can try taking part in some of them. For example, there is something called HSCTF, high school CTF. There is something in the US called PICO CTF. These are all, very famous school level CTFs. And anybody can take part and, start learning security. And there are two types of CTFs mainly. One is called the Jeopardy style and attack defense style. And now there are several other types of CTFs as well, called, pen testing CTF and, hardware CTF, SCADA CTF, various other things have come right now. But mainly there are two types broadly. One is called the Jeopardy and attack defense. So in Jeopardy style, what happens is there is a website, and the website has got all these applications deployed. And then you are supposed to interact with them via web and then find out the vulnerabilities. Maybe download a particular file and then find the vulnerability and submit a flag, or, via the web itself, you interact and find a vulnerability. In this style, what happens is that participants don't get to interact with each other. So if there are 100 teams playing, each 100 of them are independently trying to find out these vulnerabilities, and there is no interaction with any of these teams. Whereas attack defense is a much more exciting version, where you are given a virtual machine where you download, and the virtual machine has these vulnerable code, and every team has the same virtual machine. So you're given a 1 hour time to analyze the code and find out vulnerabilities, and you are supposed to fix your own vulnerable code and then use the knowledge that you gained, the vulnerabilities that you find, to attack the other teams. So you get points for both attacking and defense. So you learn much more skills. I have seen, my own students learn a lot and get excited and, play throughout the night. I also sometimes sit with them, and there's a huge amount of learning, and it's a lot of fun. Sometimes you find that, somebody really, deleted everything from your VM. So you learn, okay, next time we should have a backup. And if something happens, we should bring it up. Several things that you learn. Some of the comments that I received from my students is that, we learned much more in these, 36 hours than in the whole, networking course, because there was so much of learning and so much of fun. Practically, people learn a lot. So these are two types of CTFs, and you can visit ctftime.org to find out what are all the various CTFs that are happening. I explained this Jeopardy style, but I will also explain a little bit about what are all the various challenges that are available. So there are different categories that are available. One is cryptography, web exploitation, forensics, reverse engineering, binary exploitation, mobile exploitation, Android mainly. So these are all the things that are there. And a participant is supposed to interact with these type of applications. Sorry, I went to the wrong slide. Yeah, in cryptography, what happens is that you are given maybe something weak crypto application. Maybe the key used for encryption is very less, so that you can brute force it and break it, or maybe there is a vulnerability in the implementation of the cryptography, and that leads to a vulnerability and things like that. So by taking part in this, you'll get a very good understanding of cryptography. Several of my students were able to give talks both the national and international level just by taking part in this, and they got a good amount of knowledge just by taking part in this. So if you are interested, these are some things that you can try. Web exploitation is about, as the name says, there are web applications, and there are intentional vulnerabilities. The most common vulnerabilities are defined by OWASP as the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. For example, SQL injection, cross-site scripting. These are all names of some of the vulnerabilities, file upload vulnerabilities, etc. So applications have these vulnerabilities deliberately written, and the participant is supposed to find it and exploit it and get a flag. Forensics, you will be given some network traffic or some memory dump, and you are supposed to find out certain things that happened and get a flag based on that. There are different types of forensics: network forensics, memory forensics, image forensics, video forensics, etc. So these categories are sometimes seen in various contests. Reverse engineering, what happens is you are given a program. It's an executable file. You do not have the source code of the program. You're given an executable file, and you are supposed to understand the working of the program. So this skill is useful when you want to do something called as malware analysis. So as I said before, malware is a program that is intentionally written to do some kind of damage. And reverse engineering, the malware helps you to find out the behavior of the malware and thereby undo the changes that it is doing. Maybe it wrote something to the registry, or it went and renamed certain files, or it is talking to some other server and sending information. So to understand what it is doing, we reverse engineer it. So this is another category. Binary exploitation, just like in web, there are vulnerabilities. In an executable file, there are certain vulnerabilities such as buffer overflows, heap overflows, use after free, etc. So these kind of vulnerabilities are, the student or the participant finds these and exploits it, and thereby learning exploitation. And the same, just like mobile, just like web exploitation, there is Android exploitation similarly. So in a CTF, there are all these categories will be there, and maybe sometimes more than this. Miscellaneous category and some programming category may be there. And there are different difficulty levels. So points will be based on difficulty level. So easy will be 100 points and difficult maybe 1000 points, like that. And teams having the most points will win the CTF. I have already explained to you what is attack defense CTF. They are given access to individual servers running vulnerable code. But the good thing here is that you interact with other teams, and then you can attack the other teams as well as defend yours, and you lose points when somebody attacks you, and you gain points when you defend yourself as well as attack the other teams. I have mentioned this, Amrita in CTF. It started in 2010. We have trained over 20,000 students from 22 states. Several of them are working in security companies. It's a team-based event, 5 people in a team, and there are 3 rounds. This I have explained it. And the event partners recruit the top students. I'll skip this. I have explained what is there in all these categories. Bug bounty program. So I have mentioned that, there are few ways that students can learn outside the classroom. One is by capture the flag or CTF. The next one is bug bounty programs. So you find security bugs or vulnerabilities, and these are all legitimate. So if you are, without permission, you go and find some vulnerability, it is against the law. And therefore, that is why you have all these war games. So war games are, legally allowed, and, you're not breaking any law. But if you are on your own going and trying to find out, actually, it's sometimes against the law. So find the vulnerability. So in bug bounty program, companies, enlist saying that we have a bug bounty program. For example, Microsoft and Google, they all have these bug bounty programs. And then you are supposed to find bugs and then report these issues with proof of concepts. And it helps you to improve your skills. And you get paid a lot of money for this, a lot of money. Sometimes you even get a job. So here is some, recent news. A 20-year-old Indian girl wins 22 lakhs bounty from Microsoft for finding a bug in Azure cloud system. And then there's Google paid 49 crores to security researchers as bug bounty rewards in 2020. And sometimes, for example, this Mac OS High Sierra bug, what happens is that somebody just tried to enter a blank password. That's it. And it, as an admin, the person was able to get in as an admin without a password. And, that got this person a lot of money. So they are outsourcing their security testing to various security researchers and getting paid, they get paid for it. So this is also sometimes exciting for various students. These are some of the popular bug bounty programs. And I'm running out of time, so I'll just go quickly. I will have these slides available and you can go through it in detail. So for getting into the bug bounty program, choose your domain, either web, network, mobile, etc. Read about these OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. There are lots of nice, tutorials. I can send you in, maybe I will send you a link to a Telegram channel in the chat. And if you are interested, if you are a faculty or a student who are interested and you need more guidance, you can join this Telegram group, and I will be available and to help you answer questions, to either get started with bug bounties or CTFs or security or teaching security, whatever. I'll be available to help. I think I'm almost out of time. Prakashji, how much time do I have left? Am I already out of time?
Another minute or 2 minutes, you can knock out everything, and then we can go for a few minutes.
Okay, then I will just end this presentation. I have recently, founded a startup to help, universities and students. It's called Traboda. You can visit traboda.com. It's a CTF platform, for practicing CTFs. There are lots of, challenges over there, and you can also, host your own contests. Suppose a university or, your students want to host a contest. It's you can host it using this particular platform. And several students are joining this platform, and you can rate yourself compared to the other students. And I mentioned that, offering various electives for faculty, like for example, malware analysis. Maybe, you don't have any knowledge about malware analysis. So we can help you through this Traboda to, develop the course and train the faculty, maybe record the lectures and the labs. The most important thing is the labs. So we will have these labs and everything available, and, you can train your students using this platform. So do check it out, and I encourage everybody to register in this platform. It is traboda.com. I will put it in the chat. And so there are various categories of challenges: web, cryptography, pawning, Android, API networks, SCADA. So many different categories of challenges are there. So I will end the talk due to limitations of time also. Summary. So we have seen the importance of cybersecurity. Every day there is some kind of incident or the other happening. And if a cyber pandemic happens, it is going to be much worse than the current pandemic. It will make it look like, it is nothing. There is a huge demand for cybersecurity professionals in both in India and globally. You have seen that, several companies, they contact me, asking, do you have a person in this area, that area? We are not able to produce people with that skills that fast. So there's a huge demand, and you have seen it even in the news reports, etc. And we have seen how to get started with cybersecurity journey, both inside classrooms and outside classrooms.